Okay, been working on some other modeling tasks here, making a little thing for my home network setup to keep it cool and hidden away. But it's time to put that away and get to work on taking photographs of my model. All right, I made this cube. I need to upload some photographs of this so they can be on the Miro board, so we can talk about my craft and quality. And let's look at a way we can set up pretty simple photographing setup at home, one that can be flexible and you can move around. The first thing, as this will often happen, you'll kind of be working, you'll make a bit of a mess, and you need to move on to a different task. So let's just take a little bit of time to pick things up, to clean up my area a little bit, and decide how I want to work with it. So we can have a place to put everything away so we're not shuffling stuff around and always working kind of in a mess. We want to be able to open things up. And it's a good chance to get rid of some trash. Find these old blades that you want to put into your sharps container, or tape up and make them safe. I'll set it on the table behind me for the time being. And look at a few things that we're going to need here to get started. One, I'm going to want a surface to use as kind of a seamless backdrop. Right now I'm just going to use a piece of Bristol because I know everyone has this. But you might want to look into getting a larger piece or just some heavy kind of construction paper that's a nice white clean surface. You probably have to replace this every once in a while because it tends to get damaged or dirty. I also have a illustration board here. This can be used as well. Right, we can get a pretty good curve with that, but it's a little bit heavy and has a lot of flex, so you'll need to use it up against a wall. And I'm actually going to use this one as my backdrop or wall to get a little extra light bounce in here. So that's why I have it set back here for my use. I can leave my cutting back down or move it away. I think one thing that's going to happen in this setup, because I've got a lot of dark table surface here and this green, I'm going to get a lot of color bounce from that. So another thing we can do to work with that is add in some more whiteboard here along the bottom, just closer to where we're going to take the model. Now, I don't really want to use this setup for taking the photographs because I'm always going to see that dark line back there. So I want something to sit over the top of it. A few other things we'll need. You need some tape here. You can also use a wall as your backdrop, kind of a wall on a table, or if you have a big piece of seamless paper that's going to cover it all, that'll work well. You can get a roll of seamless for $20 to $30 on Amazon, and that's a great thing to have for a long time and set up kind of in a permanent location. But if you don't have that permanent location, let's see what we can do here. I've got my model for taking the photographs of. It'll also help to have a tripod. You can get these small, kind of cheap ones. This one came with some webcam or something where it's got a little bit of adjustability. It can be a single monopod or this, and it can attach to a standard quarter thread phone holder. And I'll do this photography with my phone because, again, we probably all have those, and so that's a good place to start. We can get quite a lot of mileage out of modern phones. You can also use a more traditional tripod here, and this can be helpful in taking photographs of flat work because you have a little bit more flexibility. So I'm going to keep it around, but from this one I'm going to take my mobile phone mount and start with the simplest option first. So let's just set that aside, out of the way, and get this one set up. This is a nice little thing. Again, you can get these pretty cheap on Amazon. Right? They just adjust to take in different size phones. You might have to make your own if you have a phone that won't fit in it, or find one specific to your phone. You can usually get a combo of these two things pretty cheap as well. You can slide it on in. You take photographs in landscape mode, not in portrait mode. Yes, you take some pictures of yourself that way, but most of our model photographs will want to do this, taking advantage of the aspect ratio of the phone camera. So let's set that over there and get a little bit set up. Like I said, I want to create some kind of seamless backdrop here. Since I'm photographing a small object, I think this can work out okay. But if I'm photographing anything bigger, I'm going to start to see all these edges and I'll want a bigger piece of paper. Let's just use this for the example setup, and you can find a bigger sheet of paper depending on what you need to take photographs of. We'll also do a little adjustment to this for taking pictures of flat work. So, again, it's not ideal to have a bunch of tape in your scene that you'll have to edit out in Photoshop or see or like do with your crops. So I'm going to cut a few pieces of tape here and do the little roll thing with them so that I can put them on the back of my paper and use that to kind of start to set it up. This tape doesn't want to stick. Try a new piece. It's okay. And I'm just going to stick these in the back up here. You can use other putties. And I want to get it so I have a good amount of surface here and a good amount of surface taller than my object there. I'm probably not going to do any up shots with this. Probably going to be more kind of 3/4 shots or maybe like flat elevational shots. So I think about an even distance on both sides is okay. And just press that there against my backboard. Again, this backboard could be a wall. It's just there so I get a lot of light bounce. So I get a little bit more general lighting. As right now I'm lighting this using a couple of a little bit higher powered fluorescent desk lamps, basically. Cut to those and show you what it is. So if you're just using a desk lamp with a decent LED in it, that can be enough. What you will notice is I don't have a lot of harsh shadows here. I have a little soft shadow on the side. Both lights are bouncing up off the ceiling and not really aiming at my work surface. And we're going to try to avoid hard shadow unless we're really exploring kind of a sun or shadow study. Got both those there. And I want to push it back so that it's almost making a corner. It's kind of this soft slope there. You can adjust that as you see fit for your thing. And then I can bring my object in and put it there. And then again, this is probably a little too close for what I want. I'm going to get that in my scene, and I can adjust it a little bit by just pulling everything forward some. Pull this up, bring it down, maybe a little bit more forward. Bring that down because my top edge is probably not going to be in my shot. Let's go ahead and bring our phone over and just open up the camera app. Keep this real simple. You'll get a lot of instruction about how to do more advanced kind of photography later from your workshops with Ernst, but we can start with this. And so I want to kind of get a simple establishing shot there of the corner. I already see we have kind of a multi-lighting soft shadow scenario. Probably aim those a little bit more to diffuse that some, but I'm going to start with this because I am at least getting a little different light on one side from the top than this side, and that's kind of what you want to look for so the object sticks out. You want your shadows to be a bit softer so they can blend into the background. Obviously in this scene we're seeing a lot of edge stuff here, and that's okay. I'm going to overshoot and then crop my image in onto the object, so I might want to like try to center this here so it's roughly in the center of my screen. Back a little bit more. You don't have to be right up on it. The camera has a pretty good sensor. We'll pick up a lot of detail. And after I take this photograph, I'll come in and choose a crop, right? Maybe I want to crop to a square or just the standard kind of 16:9 or some other aspect ratio. And we can test a few other things out there. I probably want a little bit more or less light on one of these sides because they're kind of even. And if I turn that a little bit, it happens because I have some daylighting over here. So let's try this out and go for it. Really what we're looking for is some consistency of the lighting. If I get up, I can play around a little bit here, taking my lights and see what that changes. So now I get a little bit more light in the scene, specifically from one side. My shadow now has become a little bit harder, and I probably want to bring that light a little bit behind what I'm working on. And that's going to be tricky with my current setup. So let's start with this. Let's aim that light back up so it's a little softer and more general. And then we'll make some modifications. There we go. We have our softer light. I think that's working. And I think we all know how to go ahead and just take the photograph. We're pretty parallel there, pretty even on both sides. And grab that picture. This tripod is kind of setting my height, but I can get a little bit more adjustment if I want a little bit more top-down view. It's looking pretty good. I'm looking right in that hole there so I can really see, hopefully from my photographs, the detail of how you constructed the box. And we'll just take a few pictures from different sides and maybe we'll play around, right, to show some other things that are happening with the cube. But once you have this set up, right, the camera is kind of aiming at this seamless backdrop here, and then you can manipulate the object and then manipulate your lighting relative to that object if necessary to tell us a little bit more about it. Maybe I want one there where we can kind of see in, but where I'm also showing you how my details were on these other corners. And that's going to vary depending on how you've made different cubes. I'm a little off center, but I think that will be fine for my cropping. So I've taken a few photographs. Let's check out how they're doing. Okay, just open them up. I'm going to come back to one of these. All right, and I zoom in, I can really see enough detail there of how this cube is getting a little dirty because it's been around for a few days, and that's going to happen. And where my seams meet up, and they're looking pretty good. If you're getting that, that's very acceptable. Kind of come in and see. I probably want a little bit more, but that's still nice to have kind of one shade of white here, another shade here, and another shade here. That really helps with the definition of the object. And if I had a little bit more diffusing and do a little bit more bounce light, I could reduce my shadows. But I'll let that be in more advanced photographic tutorials. The only other thing I really want to cover here is maybe we want some like kind of 3/4 top down shots. I want something a little bit more straight on. So in that case, I might need to either change how I'm using my tripod or take my phone on out of it. So with this one, I can do some weird things by like setting it down like this, but it's not perfect. It kind of gives me a weird up view. So I'm gonna pop it out. And you can make a stand to help with this. Or for small things like this, we can just use the phone on the base here so we can get a pretty stable shot. We're not kind of tilted like that or just taking it from a random angle. We're really trying to establish what our shot will be, and I'm always aiming straight back. Ooh, maybe I'll do it this direction because I just took a big burst shot. Not aiming straight back. And that's putting me pretty low if I want to get a worm's eye view. Trying to keep this straight up and down so it's not tilted like this. We want to be able to kind of take straight shots to keep an even horizon line, even if that horizon's lower. This starts to distort the verticals a lot. We want to keep those verticals pretty square. But we'll take this low angle shot. There we go. And if I turn back over, just be careful not to put any pressure on it. I'm taking more of like a top level shot. Obviously we're a bit limited there in terms of what we can get with just using our tabletop, but that's not bad. And that might be where I pull out this type of tripod and actually set it up from the ground. You might not be able to see what I'm doing, but I'm just extending the legs. Right, and I can set that there. I might have to go a little bit lower, but then I could have a lot more control by going up and down with that and shooting my shot from a little further away. I think that's what we do at the next level. Let's start very simple and see how those work. The next thing I want to look at is photographing like a drawing or a flat work, and that's a little bit different. Again, you can use a wall for this, and you really want to use a tripod to have a lot of control of where you're aiming with things. I'll leave this here just to have a little bit more white happening. So maybe I'll get myself set up on this tripod. Again, if you just have this other one, you can adjust your setup for that. You might have to put this like up on a box so you can be more eye level with something. But really what we want to do is be able to look flat at something. So this board is not ideal because it's kind of warped when it leans back and it's just leaning against my light set here. So we'll use a wall, ideally, but in a pinch, I'll use this to kind of show you how it works. Let me grab another piece of board to flatten it out. You can see if I just do 2 layers, or here I have some foam board that can help give me a flatter surface, and that's really what I want. This is at an angle right now, which is okay because I can just adjust my tripod to deal with that angle, so it'll be fine. Now why don't I go ahead and get a drawing. We have This one we've already created, and I want to document that to put on Trello. Again, we'll use a little bit of tape. Standing for a second so I can get this set up. And since I haven't trimmed this drawing down, I just have the full frame of the paper relative to my outer boundary. I can just tape straight on the corners and then crop those out of my shot when I'm done. And this is a big thing in photography. You'll often, especially if it's not your main focus and you haven't had a lot of time training with it, it's best just to get a little bit of an overshoot and then do some cropping afterwards. If you do too much, you'll lose some resolution, but for this case, it should be okay. Now, let's see. Put this in a place where you can see it. It's not so bad. In the video there, you can see at least the general gist of it. It might help just to put it down so I can make sure it's straight across. The less editing I have to do, having these edges vertical and horizontal can be helpful. I'll just pop my phone back in this thing. Careful not to put it on your buttons. And what I want to try to do is be as straight on as possible. With this drawing. And so since I'm elevated above it, and this is tilted a little bit, right? Ideally we would just have this flat and put it straight at the eye level across from us. Let me go ahead and drop the tripod so it's a little bit more down in line with where this is at. You can still see my camera there. And then that is a little bit too low. So I can bring this up, in my case tilt it forward, and I'm trying to get it so that this drawing in here is perfectly square. Right, and I'm not going to take my photograph zoomed in. If I zoom in to where I can see all the edges of it, I can start to see if it's parallel on both sides or if I need to make some adjustments. So just want to line that up. So I've got a little bit of tilt going on here, and that could be a tripod adjustment and this ball mount here. And the more you can kind of set up a station for this, and there we go, freed up my ball. So I have a ball mount here, that's nice. If not, you just have to rotate the tripod side to side. Let's come over a little bit further so we're centering the camera. And make sure we get that top edge pretty parallel, bottom edge parallel, side edge is parallel. I think I need to come up just a little bit there. Center that drawing, and I'm not going to take the picture with the digital zoom on, we'll just take it at full frame. Go ahead and take that. Maybe we'll do a little bit of testing with our lights. What you see on my drawing is I don't have any shadows on there, but I probably want just a little bit more light kind of coming across it evenly. So I'm just taking my lights, they have a diffuser, cheap diffuser shield on them, setting them down over that. So I have a little bit more even light. I'm getting a lot of reflection from this white sheet down here to help keep that not get too blotchy. Again, the ideal situation would be to have the lights kind of back behind us, but not directly behind us for shadow purposes. So maybe I'll do a second one when we get into more advanced stuff there. But let's just try this out. Grab a couple frames. I just take a couple to make sure the focus is good. And once that's in place, go and check them out. I'm going to zoom in. Getting pretty good definition of the lines there. So for all of these, you can take them to your computer and you could use Photoshop, or I think every phone system has some way of doing this, where you can go ahead and grab this, then hit the edit button up here. And we want to work on crop and rotation. My rotation should be good, but if it's a little messed up, you can always fix that. And then I want to crop in. See if we can get a little better view here. And since I have some edge lines on my drawing, I can use those to line up to. But if that's hard to see, right, we might want to go to our computer to use Photoshop or the built-in app there. But I've kind of done that editing with it, and you can try out a few other adjustments if it helps make it a little cleaner, depending on your lighting setup. That's pretty even, but it's got a little bit of a kind of gray cast to it. You can play around with some filters there, or use our manual control here. I might just want to like bump up my exposure just a little bit to get a little bit brighter. And let's go find our shadows. Aren't that important. Sorry, looking for contrast. Right, if I bump that up just a bit for a drawing like this, it's kind of more like how a scanner would take it. If you go too far, it's going to start to eat your lines and make them look messy, but just a little bit of bump there. That's probably fine. We'll leave that as it is. Brightness, black point should be okay. You can test, but I don't think that's going to matter much for this drawing. So mostly it's going to be like exposure, contrast, maybe a little brightness. Color's not going to matter. And there's all these other things you can play with. You can see if you can get noise reduction, but that's kind of going to fuzz out your drawing. Sharpness and things like that might help. Right? But it starts to look a little sharpened, like a digital image, so you can give it just a tiny bit of sharpness. Might help the lines crisper, but yeah, we'll just leave it how it is. And tint and stuff doesn't matter because we're working with black and white. So when I'm happy with that, go ahead and hit done. It'll save it, and now I should be able to upload that to Miro either through my phone or through the desktop interface. So I have to sync these. You can have them sync to Google Drive or share it to your Google Drive, or just work with the sync connection between Photos or iCloud Desktop or something like that to get them all to your thing. Don't need a ton of pictures. I took a lot of different ones, and then I'm going to find the ones that I'm most interested in and start to work on those. That's going to be a really tough one to crop because I've got this line here and I probably want to move a little closer or do something different. That's okay right there as a more of a straight on shot. So if I hit edit on that before my camera runs out. Right, again, just want to do a crop. You can set ratios for this, so maybe I want to try a square ratio and then just do my zooming in so I can really get that. We've got a 1/3 division here of the page going on, which is a common photograph kind of layout. We want our pixels, our main focus, to be kind of within those 1/3. And so I'm kind of centered there, and that's looking pretty good. I'm not even going to worry about adjusting settings really. We do a little auto. Oh, that's not bad, right? It's giving us a little bit of more darkness inside. That makes it a little more dramatic. It's looking pretty good. So just getting comfortable with these basic tools that you have can quickly improve the image from the original shot, even if you have okay lighting, right? Our shadows have really subdued. We're really seeing the cube and its geometry, and that's what we want to show off. Let's see. I like this one, showing it in a different way. Run through it again, but you want to make sure you take this step every time. All right, I'm going to do a different aspect ratio here. Let's go and look at 16:9, which works with standard kind of screen resolutions. You'll see a lot of that in Miro, but it's going to mean that I need much more side-to-side width in terms of my seamless. So I'm just at the boundary of what I can get away with here. But this gives me a lot more white space to really frame the object in the image, which I'm looking for, so it doesn't feel as kind of compressed. You could also go with 4:3, which is like a kind of older standard screen resolution, or like a photograph, 4:6, kind of similar to that. But I like this one, it's a little more dramatic, and I'm gonna try again. Let's see how the auto does. It's not bad. All right, if I start to play with that, it does a lot of weird different things. I don't know what the slider on auto means. And auto is not always the best, but I think I need a little more exposure, not too much to burn it out. And let's come over again to our contrast and just give it a tiny bit. We'll start to get artifacting. This is a small screen, so you can't see it, but if you do too much, Get a lot of artifacts. Lighten it up just a tad. And I'm okay with that. So these should all be ready to upload, and you should be able to quickly take photographs of both flat work and model work with a little bit of a desk setup like this. And you can get more refined by looking at some of the advanced tutorials up on Miro to really take advantage of the lighting setup. We'll talk about that a little more later. All right, thank you.